Bezos.
Well, this is a busy time of the year for Santa.
Ho, ho, ho.
But even he has competition these days. The richest man in the world is hot on his heels, sending out more goodies than anyone else on the planet. Now, millions of you love his company, Amazon, but many of his little helpers and local shopkeepers are not so happy.
Give me that cheer, give me all that cheer.
I'm Jeff Bezos. I'm the founder of Amazon.com.
The three big ideas are low prices, fast delivery, and vast selection. What has worked at Amazon is putting the customer first, which is easy to say but difficult to do. We work on things that we know customers like. I'm very proud of the culture that we have at Amazon.
Thousands of Amazon staff members across Europe are protesting over the way the company treats its warehouse workers.
If those low-wage employees leave, they'll just find other ones. They don't have any leverage.
Amazon, which has over 175 fulfillment centers around the world and more than 500,000 employees, was ranked one of the 12 worst companies to work for.
There's a point system, and each point is basically a disciplinary. So if you get 6 points, you lose your job. And you'd get points for things like if you took a day off sick, if you took too long going to the bathroom, so you had a situation where someone had urinated in a bottle.
So what kind of a person amasses more wealth than any other human being in the history of the world, while the people who generate that income for him have to pee into bottles and don't make a living wage? A megalomaniac.
You have become the wealthiest man in the world.
I can assure you I have never sought that title.
Jeff Bezos is worth $150 billion.
Last year, Amazon made $5.6 billion in profit. They netted that, but they used tax credits and other benefits to avoid paying any federal income tax.
Do you think Amazon has gotten too big?
Yeah, I do. And I think it is important to take a look at the power and influence that Amazon has.
Should they be punished for a brilliant business model which is wildly successful, which brings down prices to consumers? To go after Amazon would be a political decision.
President Trump today confirming reports that he has a bone to pick with Amazon.
It's a great thing for the president to attack it if you're a competitor, but it's not so good if you're a consumer.
They need to understand the value that big companies bring in and not demonize or vilify business. There are certain things only big companies can do.
Now, are the critics being unfair, or is it time to rein in Jeff Bezos and his massive Amazon empire? We're all affected. Just think about it for a moment. You're either a shareholder, an employee, a consumer, a competitor like those small shopkeepers, or a taxpayer. Or in some cases, you might fall into several of those categories. One of our guests, the newspaper journalist Alan Selsby, knows what it's like to be an employee. He worked undercover at an Amazon warehouse for 5 weeks. We'll also be joined by the Emmy Award-winning journalist Ben Swan, who's been scrutinizing Amazon's business practices. But let's start with Robert Spector, the author of Amazon.com, How to Grow Big Fast. And he should know he lives in Seattle in the shadow of Bezos Towers. Robert, if I can come to you first of all then, how important is Jeff Bezos' leadership when it comes to Amazon's success?
Well, this is all Jeff Bezos' idea, his vision, his plan. And everybody I interviewed when I wrote my book said he's the smartest guy they know. And he's looking many steps ahead of all of us. That's what makes Jeff Bezos special.
Is it just his intellect? What about the ruthlessness of the man?
Well, you know, if you sat one-on-one with him, you'd find him one of the more charming people you've ever met. He's got a great sense of humor and a quick wit, but there's also that side of him that will, you know, stick the knife into the gut and turn it.
Fair enough.
He has both those things.
Fair enough. Well, Robert, that's probably an aspect of him that shareholders love. I mean, take a look at this. If you'd bought $1,000 worth of stock in 1997 when it floated, it would be worth close now to $1 million today. How did he do it, Robert? How did he transform this small online delivery, bookstore delivery service into this retail monster we see today?
Well, books were the Trojan horse for Amazon to get into retail. Jeff's vision from the beginning was to sell everything to everybody. And through not having to pay sales taxes in certain states, to understanding the technology, understanding the finances, understanding public relations, those are the foundations that made Amazon what it is today.
You know that Trojan horse aspect. We're going to be coming back to that. We'll talk about what he's doing to the high street. But let's go to the Amazon Atlas now. It operates in 17 countries and is the number one retailer, online retailer in many of those. Let's have a zoom into the US market, for example. What do we have there? It's nearly doing as much business as all the other online stores together. Robert, just back to you for a moment. How is he able to outperform everybody else put together?
Well, he was able to add so many products and be able to be the go-to site for anybody in the U.S. It used to be, to Google something, and now you're really Amazoning something because people think that you have the best price there. You don't always have the best price at Amazon, but people think, well, whatever I need, from cough drops to a coat to whatever, I can get at Amazon. That's the easiest thing. It's a no-brainer. Let's just go to Amazon.
I got you. But let's not forget that China, not the United States, is the world's biggest online market. And there, Amazon is playing second fiddle to Alibaba, which is owned by China's richest man, Jack Ma. But he's still no match for Bezos in terms of wealth. He's worth around 34 billion, whereas we've got Bezos there on about 135 billion. It depends on the share price, of course. Robert, China's obviously a very, very important market. Do you think Amazon can crack it there?
Well, it can crack it, but I think that Alibaba has so many competitive advantages, plus the fact that that Jack Ma is Chinese, and they'll get some business there, but I don't see them overtaking Alibaba in China.
One quick question for you. Do you think the Amazon share price will continue to go up as we've seen it in the past?
If only I could look into the future.
Well, on the fundamentals, when you take a look at the fundamentals, right. What do you think?
I think short term, yes. Long term, I'm not so sure, because I know we're going to be talking about how governments feel about Amazon and potentially maybe breaking up Amazon.
Sure.
Who knows?
Okay. Thank you for that. Well, let's move on to Amazon workers now. Amazon employs more than 600,000 people worldwide. In the run-up to Christmas, they hire an extra 120,000 in the United States alone. But a lot of employees complain that their wages, on average just over $28,000 in the United States, are too low considering the work they have to do. Let's go to Alan Selby. So Alan, just remind our viewers what you were doing last year for 5 weeks when you went undercover into an Amazon warehouse.
So in our country, in the UK, Amazon has a long and checkered record when it comes to its employees and how it treats them. So what we decided to do is spend 5 weeks just taking a look at exactly how life is inside one of these warehouses. So I went in and took a job as one of these Christmas temps and recorded what I found in there, and to be honest, it was what we expected. It was dire for a lot of these people.
What were the worst aspects?
So we had people falling asleep, we had people absolutely exhausted, people just being really run into the ground by massive targets that they had to meet just to attain the productivity that Jeff Bezos and Amazon had set. So you've got people trying to pick or pack 300, 400 items an hour, and at every turn their job security is on the line.
Alan, we hear the excuses that they get more than minimum wage, and they don't have to work there if they don't want to, and that Amazon isn't doing anything illegal. What would you say to that?
Well, Amazon's not doing anything illegal, but Amazon's a very powerful force in the retail world today. They employ thousands of people, and every Christmas they offer thousands of new jobs. But we have to question whether or not we live in a society where it's okay for people to be given the bare minimum just because it's not illegal. These people are being paid very little. And you walk around a warehouse like this and they might not have to work there, but they might not have any other prospect. And this might be the best option for them. It's not an excuse for Amazon then to treat them like, like a piece of dirt on the bottom of their shoe.
Okay, well, of course, it's not just the United Kingdom. We also have seen protests at Amazon sites in Spain, Germany, Italy, and in the United States, a very well-known senator, Bernie Sanders, was trying to introduce an initiative called Stop Bezos. Have a listen.
Meanwhile, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, his wealth increases by another $260 million every single day. You got that? You might think that he had enough money to pay his workers a decent wage.
Well, let's go to Ben Swan now. Ben, this is something you've been taking a look at for our other viewers around the world. Just explain, what is Stop Bezos?
The Stop Bezos Act was basically set up as a way of compelling companies like Amazon to pay their workers at a higher wage or to be taxed at a much higher rate because of the fact that many of their employees are on public assistance here in the United States. So when you have thousands upon tens of thousands of employees who are also having to draw public assistance like food stamps, government housing, and Medicare and Medicaid in order to just be able to survive, Senator Sanders introduced this act saying, well, if Amazon won't pay them, and yet these people are taking money from the public taxpayer dole, we're going to instead tax those companies at a higher rate in order to make up for what taxpayers are subsidizing.
And what happened? Was it successful?
Well, it was successful if you think that the act was not ever meant to become law. A lot of people say it was not meant to become law. Right. It hasn't become law, but it didn't need to become law because once this act started to get some momentum, Jeff Bezos stepped forward and said, actually, stop, you don't need to do anything. We're going to raise the minimum for all employees at Amazon to $15 an hour. So that move was made. However, one thing that the media has kind of ignored here is the fact that while Bezos raised that minimum rate for the hourly worker, they also took away stock options for many of the workers. So in the short term, you do get a bump in your pay, but we all know that stock and the stock market is where wealth is derived. So many workers have lost out on the long-term wealth of those stock options.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Ben. Well, there's no doubt Mr. Bezos runs a tight ship, and that can be hard on the workers. But at Amazon, they say the consumer is king, and the truth is, it is hard to beat Amazon on price and convenience. I mean, there are more than 560 million products for sale on Amazon. You have reviews at your fingertips, and you can compare prices with a few other different suppliers while you're there. You don't even have to get off the couch. But price isn't everything. What about those traditional little shopkeepers and their expertise, hard bought over many years? Doesn't that count for something? Our producer, Hannah, went to a quaint little town in southeast England where she found the high street really struggling.
High business rates and huge rents mean bricks and mortar businesses are struggling to keep up with the online giants. And for consumers, it's much easier to shop at home in your pyjamas.
Matt wants 3 specific things: running shoes, a ski helmet, and a Game of Thrones book. I better get my skates on.
First up, a book. Bookshops are magical. Amazon actually started life as an online bookseller. Let's see how the real thing compares.
The advantage of going into a shop is that you can browse. As a customer, you can see the book for yourself when you come into the shop, so you can be absolutely sure when you buy it that it's in the condition that you want it and it's the right book.
Whoa, that was crazy! I thought paper was a myth. Next up, trainers. While I'm here, I might as well take advantage of some in-store advice and get some for myself.
So, Alan, I'm running a marathon. Can you help me get some shoes?
Certainly.
Alan tells me customers are happy to take his advice, but when it comes to making the purchase, they're full of excuses.
I'm running out of time, I'm going to have to come back. Somebody's buying these for me. I need to think about it, which is the classic one.
Now I want some advice on a ski helmet.
It's really important to get the correct fit for your head.
Oh, it's a perfect fit, but it does seem a bit pricey. Why is that, Tezza?
We have rent, rates, wages, delivery costs, which are expensive for a small business.
I can really see Matt rocking that helmet, but yeah, I'm gonna get those running shoes. It is Christmas after all. But I had a quick look online, and I found them so much cheaper. It's a real moral dilemma, to click or not to click.
Well, we've all been there, haven't we? But it is a real dilemma for many of us. Let's have our new guest come in now. Harry Wallop, an expert on retail here in the UK. What would you advise there, Harry? What's the right thing to do?
Well, only you and your conscience really know what to do about whether you should buy online or not. But, I don't think that Amazon can take the blame for the troubles, certainly that in the UK the high street is facing. As your report made clear, there are all sorts of other issues, specifically very high business rates and very high rents.
But you're there, aren't you? You're using the expertise of the little shopkeeper, whether it's the ski shop or the running shop, and you've spent, good 20 minutes, half an hour with them, and then you nip around the corner, have a coffee, check your phone out, and you see that you might be able to get it cheaper, maybe by 10, 15%. Isn't there a responsibility to the shopkeepers as well, isn't there?
Well, yes, but then of course a lot of shops are catching up and doing a better job of offering something that Amazon can do. I have a local bookshop that has opened in the UK and just around the corner from me in London, and that is in fact a fascinating development. Bookshops are slightly on the rise in the UK after a decade of being hammered by Amazon, and what it can do is it promises, even if you call up at 6 p.m, they will have the book for you first thing the following morning and you can pick it up. And actually, you know what? That is just as convenient as Amazon.
Harry, is the high street actually dying or is it just evolving?
That's a really good question. The high street, I don't think, is dying, but it desperately needs to change, and it's changing a bit too slowly at the moment. I mean, frankly, in Britain, certainly, we have too many shops, and some just need to close, and the big chains are realising that. They are cutting back, and the high street needs to evolve, and we need to have probably more people living on the high street, and more basic services there, be it schools or old people's homes, to breathe life back into the high street.
Now, we have online sales in the UK of around 20%, just under 20% of total retail spending. Do you project that will keep growing, or has it plateaued now?
No, it's been steadily growing, but growing really slowly over the last decade. I mean, a lot of people are surprised that only 18 out of every £100 or so is spent online in the UK. It is likely, obviously, to keep on growing, but there are some things people are very reluctant to buy over the internet, specifically food and drink. People do not like buying their groceries over the internet, and that is only a 3 or 4% market, as in only 3 or 4% of all groceries are bought
Well,
online.
of course, that's Amazon's next frontier, isn't it? I mean, not content to suck up all your money online, it's also opening its own stores on the high street. So far, it's opened 7 Amazon Go supermarkets in the United States, and they're planning to open one in London soon. Is this the future of grocery shopping?
What would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. So how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology.
Well, let's go back to Seattle, and we have Robert there. Robert, you actually have one of these types of supermarkets. What's your experience of it?
Actually, I wouldn't call them a supermarket. They're more like convenience stores. But Amazon is looking to open up larger stores, and they already own the Whole Foods supermarket chain. So the Whole Food sector is something that's very much in Jeff Bezos' sights.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the competition is finding ways to fight back against that.
Harry, you go into these supermarkets and Amazon uses all sorts of euphemisms for how they're going to keep an eye on you. But the fact is you're going to be followed around by hundreds of cameras. And then when you walk out, there won't be that interaction with Doris who's, at the till. This is very creepy.
Well, yes and no. Of course, we're followed around every day thanks to our smartphone in our pocket, and most of us don't bother turning off tracking services and location services. So all sorts of people are tracking us every day, and Amazon would argue this is not radically different.
Okay.
And in terms of chatting to Doris at the till, I mean, yes, it is a very cynical move by Amazon to get rid of a whole host of workers, but is it any more cynical than the British supermarkets who are trying to rip out the tills and replace them with those dreaded self-scan? They always go, you know, unintended item in the bagging area. So I'm not sure I have a philosophical problem if you're, you know, in what sort of robot is going to be in my shop.
Okay. Now, we're going to be talking about Santa in just a moment, and some say he's worth way more than Jeff Bezos, in a way. But before we do that, let's find out if Amazon's playing fair when it comes to paying taxes. Now, last year, Amazon made $5.6 billion in profits, but paid nothing in federal taxes. It sounds a little strange, but it's maybe quite standard. Is that right, Ben?
It is standard, and it's not just Amazon that does that. Apple and many other major companies also take advantage of the tax system, which candidly isn't even written by politicians. It's written by lobbyists who game the system for the most wealthy people in America.
And presumably Amazon has very powerful lobbyists.
No question about that. Look, the Jeff Bezos and Amazon are not necessarily this new problem. Perhaps they are the greatest example of the problem that's been building now for decades in terms of tax policy, in terms of, you know, those powerful corporations getting these cuts, in terms of the way workers are treated, in terms of running people out. I mean, there's so many problems you can point to with Amazon, but Amazon didn't create these problems. They seem to be just taking advantage of them in a way that others maybe haven't in the past.
And Amazon recently ran a competition to place its headquarters too, if you like. Tell us about that. What was so controversial about that?
Well, what was controversial is that Amazon made this huge deal about their HQ headquarters too, which was going to be placed somewhere in the United States. And they essentially created a massive bidding war with cities all across the nation bidding to have this headquarters placed in their city. Atlanta, where I live, was one of those cities that essentially, along with the state of Georgia, offered, you know, everything, including the kitchen sink, to Amazon to beg them to please do us the privilege of having your headquarters placed here. Tax incentives, all kinds of offers in terms of development and things that Amazon would be given. But when it all came to an end, Amazon ultimately placed its headquarters in two cities, split it between New York City and Washington, D.C. in that area. And of course, the whole thing, when that happens, looks like a huge scam that's been run on these different cities, because ultimately New York City and Washington, D.C., the power centers of the country in terms of politics and business. Jeff Bezos has private homes in both those cities, 7 minutes from each of the locations that was decided, just like he does in Seattle. And so a lot of folks have looked at this and said, this entire thing appears to have been a massive scam to get everybody to make these offers and these bids so that Amazon could receive billions of dollars in tax subsidies from the state of New York and from the Washington, D.C. area or the state of Virginia. It was really disgusting to a lot of people how it all ultimately played out. And of course, taxpayers and voters had no say in it.
Back to Robert Spector then in Seattle. Robert, do you think it was a big con job? And what's been the benefit to Seattle of having Amazon's headquarters there?
Well, the benefits to Seattle are both, there are benefits and there are downsides. Amazon has transformed the city of Seattle. Just one factoid: Amazon has more office space in downtown Seattle than the next 40 companies combined. And they've transformed neighborhoods. They've also brought in, we have a big contingency from Google and Facebook and of course Microsoft, which is here. So Amazon has totally changed the city of Seattle.
Well, thank you very much for that now, Robert. Well, whatever you think of Jeff Bezos, bottom line is he is a businessman, and Amazon has made him the wealthiest man in the world. But you know, even he would have to admit he's no Santa.
This holiday season, things are heating up at the North Pole. For centuries, Santa's been #1. But is the big man about to get the sack? Well, bye. Down in the Amazon, another man with a lot less hair is busy building his empire. His network of elves working around the clock to make sure everything gets delivered on time. And he uses the front door. Can Santa compete with such radical developments? Will next day delivery beat out one night delivery? Santa may have way more customers than Amazon, But Amazon's catching up, and its workforce dwarfs Santa's little helpers. Amazon's spending a fortune on advertising to capture the Christmas market, but Santa gets the kind of advertising money can't buy. Some put his brand value at $1.6 trillion, way more than Amazon, but that hasn't stopped its owner making a fortune. So who's number one? While Bezos' wealth is unparalleled, you can't put a price on a legend.
Merry Christmas!
Well, thanks to Santa there for that little cameo, and thanks to all our guests for appearing on this edition of The Nexus. Remember, you can see this episode, all our previous episodes, on our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.